Familia, qué bueno que nos acompañen. Thank you for investing your time in this training, in this video. Um, what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes is our value proposition here at Christos Community. Um, Not that long ago, a very well-known pastor said that every church, regardless of resources, regardless of the number of people that they may have in the congregation, regardless of the money that they may have access to, every local congregation is supposed to be a signature congregation. That's the term he used, a signature congregation. What he meant is that every church has a particular call from God um, to serve in His kingdom. In other words, also that he meant to say that every church is called to do a specific thing, and that congregation is the only one who can do that specific thing within the context of God's kingdom. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. The value proposition at Christos Community is what makes us a signature church, what makes us unique. It is what we as a congregation are able to contribute to God's kingdom. It's what God is calling us to contribute with to His kingdom. So let me tell you just here a short overview what we're going to talk about. We're going to have a brief description of our VP, our value proposition, that is the core essence of God's call for us. We're going to talk about its implications, and then we're going to close with how to implement that value proposition. Of course, our VP, our value proposition, it's related to discipleship. So this is the definition that I would like us to commit to memory. If we remember nothing else about our church, if somebody comes and say, hey, what is Christos about? We can say that Christos is a bilingual church. We can say that we have a special interest in Hispanic families. We can say things like that, which all that would be true. That we're culturally diverse, that we can say all these things, that we are focused on discipleship. Yes. This would be a better way to describe our congregation. Think of it as the very famous elevators page that if you were in an elevator coming down to the lobby, and there's just a few floors before you reach the lobby, and somebody in the elevator asks you, okay, so what is Christos about? You will have but a few minutes to explain what makes us Christos Community. What is the core of our ministry? Well, if you answer with this definition, you will be in a good place. So our value proposition, what we call to do, what we have to contribute to the kingdom, is a meaningful and relevant way for the gospel to cultivate us as humble followers of Jesus Christ in a culturally diverse setting. That is our value proposition. That's what we're called to do. I want us to think about it for a second here. It's a meaningful and relevant way for the gospel to cultivate us as humble followers of Jesus Christ in a culturally diverse setting. Now, let me tell you about the implications, and we have 4 implications. If what we said is true, and it is, if that's our call from God, then this is true. For our value proposition to be true, this is also necessary to be true. So we believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is powerful enough to go over any and all cultural barriers. Those barriers, humanly speaking, are very difficult to overcome. Those cultural barriers are real, are big, are challenging, many of them fueled by our own sin. But the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ are powerful enough to overcome cultural differences. That is the first implication. What we mean by this is that there is no one single human culture, one single human group that is way too far from God's grace not to reach them. So the good news are powerful enough. Second implication is this, that the ability to follow Jesus Christ in humility is the end result of discipleship. It is not theological knowledge. It is not Bible knowledge. That is not the end result of discipleship. Unfortunately, here in the US, it's very common to identify discipleship efforts with how well we use a particular curriculum. And that is not what the Bible calls discipleship. Here, what we are trying to say, because of our context, because we are operating in a culturally diverse setting, it is important for us to remember that humility to follow Jesus Christ is what we're aiming for. We want to see people following Jesus. We want to see people following Jesus Christ in humility. We don't want people to necessarily adapt, or embrace our own cultural preferences. We don't want to make them like us. We want the Spirit to work through us and make them like Jesus Christ, who was humble, who followed what God the Father called him to do. So this is the end result, humility. And as I said, humility is that ability that we have to set aside what we think is right, what we think that what we like, what we prefer, our cultural preferences, to set it aside so that we may be able to honor God, bring renown to him, bring fame to his name, and bless others. That is humility. The third implication is this, that the more I follow Jesus Christ in humility, the easier it is for me to set aside what I prefer. And also, it goes in the other direction. The more I set aside what I prefer, the easier it is for me to follow Jesus Christ in humility. Personally, I believe that humility and our ability to step out of our own cultural preferences are two sides of the same coin. And the more I do one, the more I can do the other. They are intimately related. Our ability to follow Christ is related to my ability to step out of what defines me, humanly speaking. And then the last implication is that the first sign of that humility, it's my desire to beg God to intervene through prayer. That is the first sign of humility. When I recognize that what God has called me to do, in this case, discipleship, in a culturally diverse setting, humanly speaking, again, it's an impossible task, and we need the power that resurrected Jesus Christ to help us, and that is expressed in prayer. And again, I want to emphasize that is the first sign. That's not the only sign. That's the first sign. It's not the only sign, but I want to give you almost like the minimal system for you to know what our value proposition is and its implications. So those are the four implications of our VP, what God is calling us to do. Now, I want to talk to you about how we implement the elements of those of our value proposition. If you have taken the other video, the other class and video, the other training regarding discipleship at Christus Community, this should be very familiar for you. The first element of discipleship is God's grace, and very specifically, we must remember His grace constantly. We must remember that it is nothing in us that has moved God to restore us. Is because of His grace. And if we remember that constantly, that will be the equivalent to a reset button, that when our pride starts to grow, when we remember His grace, boom, that brings down our pride. That will remind us that it is not us, it's not something that we have contributed to, something that we have that has enticed God to love us. Is completely His grace. So we need to remember that constantly. This is the first element of discipleship, God's grace. The second element is humility, and we talk about that. Humility is the end result. We should aim in everything we do here at Christus. We should aim to equip our people to express that humility, to learn that humility, to grow in that humility. And the first way to express that, the first sign of that humility, is through prayer. And don't forget, humility is that ability that I have to set aside what I prefer so that God may be glorified and others may be blessed. And that, it's really painful. It again, is not a simple, easy task. Humanly speaking, again, going back to that term, is not something simple. We must depend on God's power to do that, and we must ask and pray and go to our God in prayer and say, would you help us? Because if you don't, I will not like to do this on my own. So that expression of humility is that first expression, my first attempt to set aside what I prefer, comes out as a need of prayer. The third element is what I call that spiral process. Our process at Christus to make disciples is not a linear process. It doesn't go from point A to point B. It's more of a spiral that repeats the same three steps to see, to enjoy, and to share the beauty of Jesus Christ. And it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, I want us to hear the point is that we don't want to forget that the call to make disciples, it's between the now and until he comes again. So there is no end of making disciples. There is no end on side when are we going to be done? Until he comes or until he calls us home. So we repeat the process, we repeat the basics, we repeat the steps, and we go deeper each time. And then the last element of discipleship of our value proposition is a culturally diverse setting. And here is not only the place where God has called us to serve, it's really the place where our heart can be exposed. And don't forget, we want to avoid idolatry. We want to avoid pride. And the best place to do that is culturally diversity, because we're going to be in a place that is outside of our comfort zone, and we're going to have to operate out of our weakness. It will be a place where we're going to be uncomfortable and where our dependency on him will be clearly on display. Also, if we have any idols in our culture, if we really believe that one element of my cultural preferences is the standard everyone else should follow, when we serve, when we make disciples, when we do this in a culturally diverse setting, that idol is going to be exposed. And it will give me the opportunity to practice humility also. So it's important. This is the fourth element. It's important for us to operate in a culturally diverse setting. Now, how do we implement it? And this is the last part of our training. How do we implement our value proposition? How do we implement this relevant way of equipping believers to follow Jesus Christ humbly in a culturally diverse setting? Okay, 4 steps. And again, before talking about each one of them, please note this. Overall, pray. Overall, pray. So let me tell you, the first thing is this. It is for you. I know you are one of our leaders. I know you are a very important person in our congregation. Maybe you're part of our staff. Thank you for your service, your service to God's people here at Christus. But know that this is also for you, that discipleship is also for the leaders. Discipleship is also for those engaged in making disciples. You, as a believer, should expect, you should desire to see meaningful spiritual transformation in your life. So, this is also for you. Take it for you. All those elements, all those implications, be sure that it is all included in your own personal uh, cultivation as a humble follower of Jesus Christ. Then, if everything else fails, if you remember nothing else, this is what I want you to remember, especially as one of our leaders. There will be many things that are begging for your attention, and we, we are very driven. I know we like results. I know it will be easy for us to look only at things that can be measured according to our preferences. If everything else, please don't forget this. Remember that the end result of discipleship is humility to follow Him. And if people are not responding the way you think they should, if people are not embracing what you think they should embrace, but if our people are following Jesus Christ in humility, and they are expressing that humility by stepping aside of their cultures, and if they're expressing this humility in praying for them and for others, in prayer for them and for others, things are going the right direction. Number 3, be a faithful steward. Use the resources God has provided. Be mindful that you are a steward, that God has given you certain gifts and abilities and people and resources and time and money and gifts and desires and passions and areas of expertise. You have all these things. So please use His resources. Follow Him in humility. Be an example for others. Use everything that God has provided for you and that He has put under your administration to be an example of what it means, to be an example for others of what it means to follow Jesus Christ in humility. And lastly, please make it easy for others to try. Make it easy for others to try it. Give a specific options. Be very specific when you tell others, this is how we see the beauty of Christ, this is how we enjoy, this is how we share it. Be very specific. This is how we go about fulfilling our call. This is how we go about implementing our value proposition. Be specific in the examples you provide. Encourage others. Support them as they try to also become humble followers of Jesus Christ. And again, overall, pray. Ask the Lord for His power to help you out, to empower you, for Him to intervene personally. So thank you so much. That's it. That is the end of our training of this video. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, you know how to be in contact with me. Let me know. My recommendation is that you come back and review the video and maybe take even more notes, process it, wrestle with it, discern it, all that good stuff. Don't just leave it as that was a nice piece of information. This is the core of our ministry at Christus Community. Thank you so very much. Thank you for your time. I'm available if you need me if you need my help for any reason. Just let me know. Blessings.